The house smelled wrong. I stood in my own doorway, duffel bag in hand, trying to figure out what had changed in the 8 months I'd been gone. Pine Sol mixed with something else. Cologne, maybe? Not mine. The living room looked like a magazine spread, too perfect, like Marta had scrubbed away any trace of real life. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Owen! My wife's voice carried from the kitchen, artificially bright. You're early. Early. Right. I'd caught the first transport out of Syria, driven 12 hours straight from the base, and somehow I was early to my own homecoming. Traffic was light, I called back, dropping my bag by the door. The sound echoed in a way it never used to. Had she moved the furniture? Marta appeared in the hallway, looking like she'd just stepped out of a salon. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless, even though it was barely 9 in the morning. She wore a dress I'd never seen before, something expensive that hugged her curves in all the right places. For whose benefit? Welcome home, soldier. She kissed my cheek, a quick peck that felt more like obligation than affection. The kids are at school. I thought you weren't coming until tonight. Plans changed. I studied her face, looking for something genuine. You look dressed up. Oh, this old thing? She smoothed the dress that probably cost more than my monthly hazard pay. I have parent-teacher conferences today. Got to look professional, you know? I knew Marta's professional look. This wasn't it. This was date night attire. Coffee? She asked, already walking toward the kitchen. I followed, noting how she moved differently, more confident, like she owned the space in a way she never had before. The kitchen was spotless, no sign of the chaos that usually accompanied getting 2 kids ready for school. So, she said, pouring coffee into a mug I didn't recognize. How was the flight? You must be exhausted. I'm fine. I accepted the coffee, noting her hands shook slightly. House looks different. I've been redecorating. You know how I get when I'm bored. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Kyle helped me move some furniture around. Kyle. That was new. Kyle? Oh, you don't know Kyle. He's a friend. Does handyman work around the neighborhood? Really helpful guy. The way she said, helpful, made my teeth clench. 8 months in a war zone, and I could read people's tells better than ever. Marta was lying through her perfectly white teeth. That's nice of him. I kept my voice neutral. Maybe I should thank him. Maybe. She turned away quickly, busying herself with wiping already clean counters. So, what's the plan? Are you home for good now? Home for good. The phrase should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like walking into enemy territory. Discharged yesterday. Back to civilian life. I sipped the coffee. It was good. Better than the swill we'd been drinking overseas. Though this doesn't feel much like the home I left. Her shoulders tensed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just observing. I set down the mug and really looked at her. You seem different. 8 months is a long time, Owen. People change. Yeah, they do. My phone buzzed with a text. Marta's eyes immediately darted to it, and I caught something that made me freeze. Relief. Like she was hoping I'd get called away again. Work? She asked. Just Rick. Wants to grab a beer later. Rick Fuller had been my sergeant overseas, now worked security at a local bar called The Drop Zone. Good man. Loyal. The kind of friend who'd tell you hard truths whether you wanted to hear them or not. Oh. Marta's face fell slightly. I was hoping we could reconnect. Tonight. Reconnect. Right. After 8 months of barely answering my calls and sending one-line emails. Rain check, I said. I need to decompress with someone who speaks my language. I speak your language? Do you? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Because I've been trying to have a conversation with my wife for 10 minutes, and all I'm getting is small talk from a stranger. Her mask slipped for just a second, and I saw something underneath. Guilt, maybe, or fear. You're being paranoid. Occupational hazard. I stood up, suddenly needing distance. I'm going to unpack. When do the kids get home? 3:30. Luke has soccer practice, but Cassie will be here. Cassie, my 15-year-old daughter, who used to text me daily until about 3 months ago. When I'd asked about it, Marta said she was going through a phase. Good. I've missed them. They've missed you too. For the first time since I'd walked in, Marta's voice held genuine emotion. Especially Luke. He's been asking when you're coming home every day. At least someone had. I headed upstairs, noting more changes. New pictures on the walls, family photos, but arranged differently. Some of my military commendations had been moved to less prominent spots. A few were missing entirely. Our bedroom looked like a hotel room. Everything perfectly arranged, nothing out of place. Even the closet had been reorganized. My clothes were still there, but pushed to one side to make room for new additions to Marta's wardrobe. I unpacked methodically, muscle memory from years of military discipline. As I put my things away, I found myself cataloging every change, every detail that felt off. The cologne scent was stronger up here. Definitely not mine. My laptop bag went on the desk by the window, a desk that had been moved from the other side of the room. Better view of the driveway from here. I could see tire tracks in the gravel that didn't match either of our cars. Wider tires. Truck, maybe. Helpful Kyle's truck. Downstairs, I heard Marta on the phone, her voice too quiet to make out words but animated in a way it hadn't been with me. I crept to the top of the stairs. He's back early. No, tonight won't work. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow. She was making plans. Plans that didn't include her husband who'd just returned from a war zone. I went back to unpacking, but my mind was already working. 8 months overseas had taught me patience, observation, and strategic thinking. If something was wrong here, and every instinct I had was screaming that something was very wrong, I needed intelligence before I acted. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my daughter. Dad, Mom said you're home. Can't wait to see you. At least someone in this family was happy I was back. I texted back, Can't wait to see you too, sweetheart. We have a lot to catch up on. More than she knew. The drop zone hadn't changed. Same neon beer signs, same smell of cigarettes and broken dreams, same collection of ex-military and blue-collar locals drowning their troubles in cheap whiskey. It felt more like home than my actual home had. Rick Fuller looked up from behind the bar when I walked in. 6'4", built like a tank, with the kind of 1,000-yard stare that came from seeing too much overseas. He'd taken the bartending job after getting out, said it was therapeutic, listening to other people's problems instead of dealing with his own. Well, look what the cat dragged in. He grinned and reached across the bar to shake my hand. Owen Hale, back from the sandbox. How's civilian life treating you? About as well as expected. I slid onto a bar stool. Whiskey. Make it a double. Rick's expression shifted. He'd known me for 5 years, deployed together twice. He could read the signs. That bad, huh? He poured the drink and leaned against the bar. Want to talk about it? I took a sip, letting the burn ground me. Tell me about Kyle. Kyle who? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Apparently he's been helping Marta while I was gone. Handyman type. Rick's face went carefully neutral. In the military, that expression meant incoming fire. Owen, just tell me. He glanced around the bar. It was early, only a few regulars nursing beers in the corner booths. He poured himself a shot and knocked it back. Kyle Jameson, goes by KJ, used to do construction before the economy tanked. Now he does odd jobs, hangs around the neighborhood bars, talks a big game. Rick paused. Talks about a lot of things he probably shouldn't. Such as? such as how lonely some of the military wives get when their husbands are deployed. The whiskey turned to acid in my stomach. Go on? Look, man, I don't know anything for sure, but KJ's been bragging about some married woman he's been helping. Says she's got a husband overseas, treats him real nice for his services. I set down my glass carefully. What kind of services? Moving furniture, fixing things around the house, keeping her company. Rick's voice was flat. Among other things. Other things. He's not subtle, Owen. Last week he was in here showing off some expensive watch, said his lady friend bought it for him. Said she was real generous when she was grateful. The room felt like it was tilting. I gripped the bar to steady myself. You think it's Marta? I think KJ's a piece of shit who likes to brag. And I think you need to be real careful how you handle this. Rick refilled my glass. Because if it is what you think it is, going off half-cocked isn't going to help anyone. He was right. I'd seen too many soldiers come home and destroy their lives in a fit of rage, but I'd also learned patience in the desert, how to watch, wait, and plan. What else do you know about him? Lives in that apartment complex off Route 7, drives a lifted pickup, black with chrome, has a temper when he's been drinking, got arrested a couple years back for bar fighting, charges were dropped. Rick studied my face. Why? What are you thinking? I'm thinking I need more information before I do anything stupid. Smart man. You want my advice? Always. Document everything. If she's cheating, you'll need proof for the divorce. If she's not, you'll need to rebuild trust. Either way, evidence beats assumptions. I nodded, finishing my drink. Thanks, Rick. Anytime. And Owen, if you need backup, you know where to find me. The drive home gave me time to think. Marta's behavior made sense now. The nervousness, the perfect house, the expensive clothes, the cologne smell, the rearranged furniture that gave a better view of the driveway. She'd been expecting someone, just not me. I pulled into our driveway behind Marta's Honda. There was another car there too, a small sedan I didn't recognize. Through the living room window, I could see Marta talking animatedly with another woman, Val Morrison, her best friend from the school where they both worked. I sat in my truck for a moment, watching them. Marta was gesturing wildly, clearly upset about something. Val was nodding, occasionally glancing toward the window. When she saw my truck, she said something to Marta, who immediately looked toward the driveway. By the time I got to the front door, they'd arranged themselves casually on the couch, coffee cups in hand, looking like they'd been having a pleasant chat. Owen! Val jumped up with exaggerated enthusiasm. Welcome home. Marta's been so excited about your return. I'm sure she has. I kissed Marta's cheek, noting how she tensed at the contact. Don't let me interrupt. I'll just grab a beer and wait for the kids. Actually, Val said quickly, I should get going. Early day tomorrow. She gathered her purse and coat with suspicious speed. At the door, she hugged Marta tightly and whispered something I couldn't quite catch, something about being careful. After Val left, the house felt oppressively quiet. So, I said, settling into my recliner with a beer, what was that about? What was what about? Val looked like she'd seen a ghost when I pulled up. Marta laughed, but it sounded forced. Don't be silly. She was just surprised to see you home so early. We were talking about school stuff. School stuff that requires whispering and dramatic exits? You're being paranoid again. Maybe I was. Or maybe 8 months of staying alive in a combat zone had fine-tuned my ability to spot lies. The front door burst open, and Luke came charging in like a small hurricane. 10 years old, all energy and enthusiasm, he launched himself at me with the kind of pure joy that made my chest tight. Dad! Dad! You're really home! I caught him in a bear hug, breathing in the scent of grass stains and childhood. This was what I'd been fighting for. This moment, this kid, this family. Hey, buddy. Miss me? So much. Wait until you see my soccer trophy. And I learned to ride my bike without training wheels, and Mom's friend Kyle taught me how to throw a spiral. The beer bottle nearly slipped from my hand. Kyle taught you? Yeah, he's really cool. He has this huge truck with monster tires, and he knows all about football, and he can fix anything. I glanced at Marta, who had gone pale. That's great, buddy. Maybe you can introduce me to him sometime. He's here all the time. Well, he was. Mom said he might not come around as much now that you're back. Luke, Marta said sharply, go wash up for dinner. But I want to tell Dad about... Now, Luke. My son's face fell at her tone, but he obediently trundled upstairs. I waited until I heard his bedroom door close. Here all the time? Marta's hands were shaking as she picked up the coffee cups. He was helping with things around the house. You know I'm not good with repairs. What kind of repairs? Just things. The back deck needed staining. The garage door was sticking. Normal stuff. Normal stuff that required teaching my son to throw a football? He was being nice. I'm sure he was. I stood up, suddenly needing to move. Where's Cassie? Upstairs. She's been moody lately. You know how teenage girls are. I did know how Cassie was. She'd been my little shadow before I deployed, always wanting to help with projects, always ready with a hug and a smile. If she was avoiding me now, there was a reason. I found her in her room, earbuds in, staring at her phone. She looked up when I knocked, and for a second, her face lit up. Then something shuddered behind her eyes. Hey, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. I sat on the edge of her bed. How's my girl? She shrugged. Fine. Just fine? That's all I get after 8 months? A ghost of a smile crossed her face. It's good to have you home. But? She glanced toward the door, then back at me. Can we talk later? When Mom's not around? Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. Of course. Everything okay? It will be now. She hugged me quickly, fiercely. I missed you, Dad. Really missed you. I missed you too, baby. Downstairs, I could hear Marta clattering around in the kitchen, probably making dinner. Normal domestic sounds that should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a performance. I was starting to understand that everything in my house was a performance now. The question was, for whose benefit? I waited until after midnight to start my real reconnaissance. Marta was asleep, or pretending to be, and the kids were quiet in their rooms. I slipped downstairs and began my investigation. 8 months of military intelligence training had taught me to be thorough and methodical. I started with the obvious places: Marta's purse, her laptop, the family computer. Her laptop was password protected now. It never had been before I deployed. I tried the usual suspects: birthdays, anniversaries, pet names, nothing. But muscle memory made her type the same pattern every time, and after watching her fingers that morning, I had a pretty good guess. Kyle 2019. Bingo. Her email was a goldmine. Months of correspondence with KJ that started innocent enough, asking about handyman services, scheduling appointments. But by May, the tone had shifted dramatically. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Owen called, but I kept it short. Missing you already. M. Last night was incredible. You make me feel alive again. When can we get away for a whole weekend? M. Bought you something special. Hope you like expensive tastes. You're worth every penny. M. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the most recent emails, sent just yesterday. Owen's coming home early. We need to be more careful. Can't see you for a while. This is exhausting me. M. Don't worry, baby. He doesn't suspect anything. We'll figure it out. Maybe it's time to tell him. You deserve better than sneaking around. KJ. Not yet. Need to think about the kids. Give me time. I love you. M. I love you. She'd told another man she loved him while her husband was dodging IEDs in Syria. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, trying to process what I'd just read. 8 months. They'd been together for 8 months. The entire time I'd been deployed, risking my life for God and country, my wife had been playing house with some local handyman. But it was worse than just an affair. She'd been spending our money on him. Expensive gifts, hotel rooms, dinners at places she'd never wanted to go with me. Our joint savings account was down by nearly $15,000. I pulled up our bank statements on my phone, regular charges at a motel on Route 7, weekly dinners at Antonio's, the upscale Italian place downtown, cash withdrawals that corresponded with KJ's bragging about his new watch, new clothes, new attitude. She'd been buying him like a piece of meat, and he'd been selling himself gladly. My phone buzzed with a text message. At 12:47 a.m., who the hell was texting me? It was from an unknown number. Your wife screams my name. Just thought you should know. A friend. I stared at the message, rage building like a pressure cooker. Someone was playing games now. Either KJ was stupider than I thought, or someone else knew about the affair and was stirring the pot. I screenshotted everything, the emails, the bank statements, the text message. If this was going to war, I needed ammunition. The next morning, I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when Marta came downstairs. She'd dressed carefully again, another new outfit that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "Morning," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby." I folded the paper and studied her face. "You look tired. Everything okay?" "Fine, just adjusting to having you home." "Funny. I'm having the same problem adjusting to being home." She poured coffee with shaking hands. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means this doesn't feel like my home anymore. It feels like I'm visiting someone else's life." "Owen, please, not in front of the kids." Luke bounded into the kitchen, already dressed for school. "Dad, are you taking us today?" "If you want me to." "Yes. Can we take your truck?" "Kyle always drives his big truck, but yours is cooler because you're my dad." Marta's coffee cup clattered against the counter. "Kyle drives you to school?" I kept my voice casual. "Sometimes. When Mom's car wouldn't start. He's really nice, Dad. You'd like him." "I'm sure I would." Cassie appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked from me to Marta with an expression far too knowing for a 15-year-old. "Ready, Dad?" The drive to school was enlightening. Luke chattered non-stop about his new friend Kyle, completely oblivious to the undercurrents, but Cassie was quiet, staring out the window with a troubled expression. After I dropped Luke off at the elementary school, Cassie and I had a few minutes alone before reaching the high school. "Dad," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "If someone you loved was doing something wrong, really wrong, would you want to know about it?" My heart clenched. Yes. I'd always want to know the truth. Even if it hurt? Especially if it hurt, because living a lie hurts worse in the long run. She nodded, seeming to come to some internal decision. "Can we have lunch today? Just us?" "Of course. I'll pick you up at noon." "Not at school. Meet me at the park on Elm Street, the one with the duck pond." "Cassie, what's going on?" "I'll tell you everything at lunch, I promise." She grabbed her backpack and started to get out, then turned back. "Dad, I'm really glad you're home. Mom's been different. Scary different." After dropping her off, I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to process everything. My marriage was over, that much was clear. The question now was how to handle it. I could confront Marta directly, but that would just lead to denials and gaslighting. I could confront KJ, but that might turn violent, and I had my kids to think about. Or I could be strategic about it. Gather all the evidence, document everything, and make sure that when this house of cards collapsed, I wasn't the one buried under it. My phone rang. Rick. "Hey man, you okay? You looked pretty shaken up last night. Getting there. Listen, you still have contacts at the courthouse? A few. Why? I might need some legal advice soon. Divorce attorney recommendations. Shit. So it's true? It's true. And Rick? It's worse than just cheating. She's been spending our money on him. A lot of money. Jesus. Okay, I'll make some calls. You need anything else? Yeah. I need to know everything about Kyle Jameson. Where he lives, where he hangs out, who he owes money to. Everything. I'll ask around. Be careful, Owen. Guys like that, when they're cornered, they do stupid things. I'm counting on it. I spent the morning documenting everything I could find. More emails, more bank records, more evidence of the double life my wife had been living. By the time I drove to meet Cassie, I had enough proof to bury them both. But I wasn't prepared for what my daughter was about to tell me. She was waiting by the duck pond, looking small and vulnerable, in a way that made my chest tight. I bought us sandwiches from a nearby deli and sat beside her on a bench. Okay, sweetheart, talk to me. Cassie took a shaky breath. Mom's been lying to you? About everything? I know about Kyle. Her eyes widened. You do? I figured it out, but I get the feeling there's more. There is. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. Dad, he's been inappropriate with me. The sandwich turned to cardboard in my mouth. What do you mean, inappropriate? Nothing really bad, but he makes comments about how I'm developing, how I'm going to be a heartbreaker like my mom. He finds excuses to touch my shoulder or hug me too long. And last month, when Mom was in the shower, he cornered me in the kitchen and told me I was becoming a real woman. Red filled my vision. Did you tell your mother? I tried. She said I was being dramatic, that Kyle was just being friendly. She said I should be grateful someone was paying attention to me since my dad was never around. The rage that filled me then was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not the clean anger of combat, but something deeper and more primal. Someone had threatened my child, and my wife had enabled it. Cassie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. And this is never going to happen again. What are you going to do? I'm going to fix this. All of it. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't be alone with Kyle, ever. If he shows up at the house, you call me immediately. Can you do that? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Are you going to divorce Mom? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, try to protect her from the ugly truth. But she'd already seen too much. Probably, but that doesn't change how much I love you and Luke. No matter what happens between your mother and me, you're my priority. Both of you. I know. She hugged me tightly. I just want things to go back to normal. They will. Maybe not the same normal, but better. I promise. As I drove Cassie back to school, my mind was already working. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. This was about protecting my children from a predator my wife had welcomed into our home. Kyle Jameson had just made this personal in a way he couldn't possibly understand. And Owen Hale, patient soldier, was about to become something much more dangerous. I didn't go home after dropping Cassie off. Instead, I drove to the apartment complex Rick had mentioned, looking for a black pickup with chrome details. It wasn't hard to find. The truck was practically a billboard, lifted so high you'd need a ladder to get in, chrome accessories catching the afternoon sun like a disco ball. Apartment 3B. I memorized the number and drove away. At home, Marta was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed tones. She ended the call quickly when I walked in. Who was that? Val, school stuff. The lie came easily, practiced. Right. School stuff. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, noting how she watched my every movement. So, I met Kyle today. She went rigid. What? Ran into him at the hardware store. Interesting guy. Really friendly. Mentioned how much he enjoys helping out around the neighborhood. Owen, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been sleeping with him for 8 months while I was overseas? The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, face draining of color. How did you? Does it matter? The question is, what are we going to do about it? For a moment, I thought she might confess, might show some remorse. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and went on the attack. You were gone for 8 months, Owen. 8 months. Do you have any idea how lonely I was? How hard it was raising 2 kids by myself? So you decided to spend $15,000 of our savings on your boy toy? It wasn't like that. What was it like, Marta? Help me understand. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you decided to play house with some loser while your husband was getting shot at in Syria. Kyle's not a loser. He's kind and attentive, and he actually cares about my feelings. And he's inappropriate with our 15-year-old daughter. That stopped her cold. What? Cassie told me everything. The comments, the touching, the way he makes her uncomfortable. And when she tried to tell you, you called her dramatic. That's not... She's exaggerating. Is she? Because I'm starting to think you'd say anything to protect your boyfriend. Marta's face crumpled. Owen, please. It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. And now I have to figure out how to clean up the mess you've made. What do you want me to do? I want you to end it. Today. I want you to tell Kyle that it's over, that he's not welcome in this house anymore, and that if he comes near our children, I'll have him arrested. And then what? We just pretend it never happened? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we try counseling. Maybe we figure out how to rebuild trust. But first you have to choose. Him or your family. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, I saw something in her eyes that chilled me. What if I can't choose? Then you've already chosen. That night, I slept in the guest room. Through the thin walls, I could hear Marta on the phone, crying and whispering, making her choice. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note, no explanation, just an empty house and 2 confused kids asking where Mom was. She had to go to work early, I told them over breakfast. Eat your cereal. But when I called the school, they said Marta had called in sick. I knew where she was. The Route 7 motel was exactly what you'd expect. A row of dingy rooms with peeling paint and broken dreams. Marta's Honda was parked outside room 12, next to the chrome-plated monument to masculinity that was Kyle's truck. I sat in my own truck for a while, watching the door, thinking about my options. I could kick it down, confront them both, probably end up in jail. I could wait for them to come out, have it out in the parking lot like some trashy reality show. Or I could be smart about it. I chose smart. I took pictures. Lots of pictures. The cars, the room number, the timestamps. Then I called Rick. I need a favor. Name it. Can you get someone to watch the Route 7 motel? Room 12. I need to know how often they meet there. Already on it. My cousin works security for the motel chain. Says they've been regular customers for months, usually Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, sometimes weekends. Jesus. There's more. Kyle's been bragging about her again. Says she's talking about leaving you, starting fresh with him. The words hit like a punch to the gut. She's what? I'm sorry, man, but you need to know what you're dealing with. I hung up and stared at the motel room door. My wife was in there with another man, planning to destroy our family, and I was sitting in a parking lot like some pathetic cuckold. No more. I got out of the truck and walked to room 12. The door was thin enough that I could hear voices inside. Marta's laugh, Kyle's deeper rumble. I knocked. The voices stopped. Housekeeping, I called in a higher pitch. We don't need anything, Kyle's voice annoyed. Hotel policy, sir. Daily service. I heard footsteps, then the chain being undone. The door opened, and Kyle Jameson stood there in nothing but boxer shorts and an attitude. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of gym-built physique that looked impressive but had never been tested. Prison tattoos covered his arms, not the professional kind, the jailhouse kind. I said we don't need... He stopped when he saw my face. Who the hell are you? I'm Owen Hale, Marta's husband, the guy who's been overseas for 8 months while you've been playing house with my wife. Behind him, I could see Marta scrambling to cover herself with a sheet. Owen? She gasped. What are you doing here? Apparently I'm interrupting. Sorry about that. I looked Kyle up and down. So you're the famous Kyle. I've heard so much about you. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Too late for that. I stepped closer, using the height and muscle mass that 8 months of military discipline had given me. We need to talk, all 3 of us. Owen, please, Marta pleaded. Not like this. Then how? You want to do this at home in front of the kids? You want to explain to Luke why Mommy's special friend isn't coming around anymore? Kyle found his backbone. Hey, asshole, you don't get to come in here and... I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the door frame. 8 months of combat training made the movement automatic, efficient. Let me explain something to you, Kyle. That's my wife you're sleeping with. That's my money you've been spending, and those are my children you've been making uncomfortable. I squeezed just hard enough to make breathing difficult. So yeah, I get to do whatever I want. Owen, let him go. Marta was crying now. You're scaring me. Good, you should be scared. I released Kyle, who stumbled backward, gasping. Because this ends now. Today. Both of you are going to listen very carefully to what happens next. I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. The smell of sex and betrayal was overwhelming, but I forced myself to stay calm, stay focused. Here's how this works. Kyle, you're going to get dressed, get in that ridiculous truck, and drive away. You're not going to contact my wife again. You're not going to come to my house. You're not going to breathe in the direction of my children. Are we clear? You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can, because I have pictures of your truck outside this motel. I have copies of the emails between you and Marta. I have bank records showing where our money went. And I have a very detailed statement from my 15-year-old daughter about your inappropriate behavior. Kyle's face went pale. I never touched that kid. Maybe not. But she felt threatened enough to tell me about it. How do you think that's going to play with the police? Or with your parole officer? How did you know about... I know lots of things, Kyle. I know you did 18 months for aggravated assault. I know you're supposed to stay away from minors without supervision. I know you've been violating the terms of your parole by drinking at the drop zone. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Want me to keep going? He looked at Marta, who was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. You didn't tell me you were on parole, she whispered. It wasn't important. You've been around my children while on parole for assault? Marta, baby, it's not what you think. Get out. Her voice was flat. Both of you. Just get out. Kyle grabbed his clothes and dressed quickly, shooting venomous looks in my direction. At the door, he turned back. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. I pulled out my phone. 1 call to your PO, and you're back in county lockup. Try me. He left without another word, his truck roaring to life in the parking lot. Marta and I were alone. Get dressed, I said quietly. We're going home. Owen, I can explain. No, you can't. There's no explanation for this. There's no justification. There's just the choice you made and the consequences that come with it. She dressed in silence, tears streaming down her face. In the harsh motel lighting, she looked older, used up. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd sold her family for a few hours of excitement with a convicted felon. The drive home was silent. At the house, I sent her to pack a bag. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. But you're not staying here tonight. Not after what Cassie told me. I won't have her feeling unsafe in her own home. She's my daughter, too. Then you should have thought about that before you brought a predator into her life. She packed quickly, throwing clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back one more time. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And now we all have to live with it. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at the wall. In a few hours, the kids would be home, and I'd have to figure out how to explain why Mommy wouldn't be there. But for now, I just sat in the quiet house, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, custody hearings, and difficult conversations with my children. Luke took it hard, asking repeatedly when Mommy was coming home. Cassie, older and more aware of the situation, seemed almost relieved. "I know it's sad, Dad," she told me one evening as we worked on her homework together. "But the house feels safer now." Marta had moved in with Val temporarily, calling every day to beg for another chance. I listened to her voicemails but rarely answered. My lawyer had advised minimal contact until the custody arrangement was finalized. Kyle, true to his nature, couldn't leave well enough alone. It started with drive-bys. His chrome-plated truck would cruise slowly past our house at random times, day and night. Then came the anonymous phone calls, heavy breathing, hang-ups, the occasional muttered threat. I documented everything, but the police said there wasn't much they could do without concrete proof. That changed on a Thursday night in October. I was helping Luke with a school project when I heard the truck rumbling down our street. This time, instead of driving past, it stopped in front of our house. I looked out the window to see Kyle getting out, clearly drunk, carrying what looked like a baseball bat. "Stay upstairs," I told the kids. "Lock your door and call 911 if you hear anything scary." Kyle was stumbling up our driveway when I met him on the front porch. "Well, well," he slurred, swaying on his feet. "If it isn't the big war hero." "You're drunk, Kyle. Get back in your truck and go home. Don't tell me what to do." He hefted the bat. "You ruined my life, you know that? Marta was going to leave you. We had plans. Marta was using you, just like she used me. The difference is, I was smart enough to figure it out." "Shut up!" He swung the bat at our mailbox, connecting with a metallic clang that echoed through the neighborhood. "She loved me. She loved your willingness to be her kept man. But when things got complicated, where is she now? She's not here defending you, is she?" Kyle's face contorted with rage. He raised the bat again, this time aiming for me. I was ready for him. 8 months of combat training had taught me to read body language, to anticipate attacks. Kyle telegraphed his swing like a little league batter. I stepped inside his reach, grabbed the bat, and used his own momentum to send him sprawling onto our front lawn. "Stay down, Kyle." But he was beyond reason now, fueled by alcohol and wounded pride. He scrambled to his feet and rushed me, swinging wild punches. I defended myself efficiently, professionally, using minimal force to neutralize the threat. It was over in less than 30 seconds. Kyle was face down on our lawn, his arm twisted behind his back in a submission hold that would have made my drill sergeant proud. "The police are on their way," I said calmly. "I suggest you stop struggling before you dislocate your shoulder." The sirens were already audible in the distance. Kyle was arrested for trespassing, assault, and violation of parole. The baseball bat, combined with witness statements from neighbors who'd seen the whole thing, made the charges stick. He was back in county lockup within the hour, but the real victory came 3 days later. I was at the drop zone, having a quiet beer with Rick, when Big Al, the bartender, called me over. "Owen, you need to hear this." He pulled out his phone and played a recording, voices from the bar's security system, clear as day. "Told her I'd make her husband disappear if she wanted." Kyle's voice, slurred but unmistakable. "Stupid soldier boy doesn't know who he's messing with." "When was this recorded?" 2 weeks ago. Kyle was in here bragging to anyone who'd listen about how he was going to handle you. Made threats about your kids, too." The recording was enough to upgrade Kyle's charges to terroristic threatening and stalking. Combined with his parole violations, he was looking at serious prison time. But I wasn't done with him yet. Through Rick's contacts, I learned that Kyle owed money to some very unpleasant people. Gambling debts, mostly, that he'd been avoiding by staying mobile. I made sure those people knew where to find him. I also made sure the story got around town. In a military community, threatening a soldier's family was about as popular as burning the flag. Kyle's reputation was destroyed before he even got out of jail. The final piece of poetic justice came from an unexpected source. Marta, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage of her life, tried to paint herself as Kyle's victim. She claimed he'd manipulated her, taken advantage of her loneliness, even threatened her when she tried to end things. Some of it might have even been true. But her victim narrative fell apart when Val, her supposed best friend, got tired of being used as a crash pad and emotional dumping ground. Val had always been a gossip, and she knew where all the bodies were buried. She told everyone who'd listen about Marta's real plans, how she'd intended to divorce me and take half of everything, how she'd been coaching Kyle on what to say to make me look like an abusive husband, how she'd been planning to move the kids in with her convicted felon boyfriend. The story spread through our small town like wildfire. Marta went from being seen as a lonely military wife who'd made a mistake to being viewed as a calculating homewrecker who'd endangered her own children. Her teaching career was over. The school board didn't fire her. They didn't have to. Parents started requesting that their children be moved out of her classes. Colleagues stopped talking to her. She was effectively ostracized from the only professional community she'd ever known. 3 months after that night in the motel, Marta agreed to an uncontested divorce. I got full custody of the kids, the house, and most of our assets. She got her car, her clothes, and a one-way ticket to start over somewhere else. Kyle got 3 to 5 years in state prison. I got my life back. The last time I saw Marta was at the final custody hearing. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident woman who'd been planning to leave me for a better life had been replaced by someone who understood, too late, what she'd thrown away. "I'm sorry," she said as we left the courthouse. "For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "I know you are," I replied. "But sorry doesn't give my kids back the security you took from them. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust you destroyed. Is there any chance—" "No, there's not." She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away. I never saw her again. That night, I made dinner for my kids in our quiet house. Luke was getting better, slowly adjusting to the new normal. Cassie had blossomed in the months since Kyle had been removed from our lives, her confidence returning day by day. "Dad," she said as we cleaned up the dishes, "are you happy?" It was a complicated question. My marriage was over. My family was broken. The life I'd planned was gone forever. But my children were safe. The threat was neutralized. And for the first time in months, I could sleep peacefully in my own bed. "Yeah, sweetheart," I said, hugging her close. "I'm happy." And I was. 6 months later, Rick and I were back at the drop zone celebrating my new job with a defense contractor. The pay was better than the Army, the hours were reasonable, and I could be home every night for my kids. "So," Rick said, raising his beer, "any regrets?" I thought about it, about the marriage that had failed, the trust that had been broken, the way I'd systematically destroyed 2 people who'd threatened my family. "None," I said, and meant it. Some people might call what I did to Marta and Kyle excessive. They might say I went too far, that I should have been the bigger person, that I should have found a way to forgive and move on. Those people have never had their children threatened by a predator, their own spouse brought into their home. I did what I had to do to protect my family. I used every resource at my disposal, every skill the Army had taught me, every connection I'd made over the years. I was methodical, patient, and absolutely ruthless, and I'd do it all again without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, when you threaten a soldier's family, you're not just fighting one man, you're fighting everything he's learned, everyone he knows, and every instinct that's kept him alive in the worst places on earth. Kyle Jameson and Marta learned that lesson the hard way. I hope they remember it for the rest of their lives.